Hello, you may not realize how much the Inquisitions, the witch trials, have affected you, even in your current present day life. Chances are, if you're watching this, if you've ever considered yourself spiritual or intuitive, even some religious people are, are maybe affected by, well, everyone is affected by what happened during the witch trials, the Inquisitions. So the Inquisitions were in the 1100s to the 20th century, to not too far ago. And so anybody who was different could have been attacked, tortured, or killed, had their family drowned. It was a very real thing. Now, I'm not against the Catholic Church or religion, but, and they're wonderful saints and wonderful people. I love this current Pope. But there were times that the Catholic Church acted as in fear, out of control, and actually persecuted people. So so let's talk about how this affects you and your psychic abilities, your intuitive, even if you're not a psychic, we all have intuitive and psychic abilities. We're thinking, we're feeling. So we're all connected to spirit, whether you recognize it or not. But this is part of the programming because it's even an insult today to say to somebody, what are you, psychic? It's kind of like a slur, or, oh yeah, they're psychic, or, so some people think it's okay. That's if you kind of work through your stuff, or maybe you were in a past life um, persecuted for being a witch or for being different in this way. Anybody who is gifted or mystical or different or didn't go to church enough, who was using herbs, who was using crystals, who was doing spells, astrology, tarot cards. Now, you have to remember back then, they didn't have a hospital. They might have had some, so you would have been a healer, but anybody who wasn't working through the church could have been called a heretic. Anybody, whenever an illness or bad luck befell people, they would look for somebody to blame it on. Because back then, in those times, they did understand some things, but they didn't understand other things. And so they did understand that everything has an energetic cause. And many believed in religion that there was some kind of a demon or an evil entity that caused an illness or an accident or a plague to happen. And when, as a shaman and an energy healer, when I look at people with issues, I usually see a thought form, or what you call a being, or an energy malformation, which has to do with negative thoughts or fear, connected to any type of illness, malfunction, accident. So that is very real, and they understood that back then. Of course, they didn't have penicillin, they didn't have, a hospital. So everything was looked at, even in the church, as evil or good. And were you connected to, in the church, were you connected to God, or were you, a heretic or demonic, okay? Or just folklore and folk medicine and different types of spirituality that are practiced over medicine women, healers, shamans. The shaman, or the energy, the medicine healer, would come with feathers and smoke and herbs to clear away the negative energy, to restore a person to health with their prayers or their chanting and um, their emblems or their crystals or their herbs, or their charms. Okay, so anyone who is practicing in a group or practicing that type of healing could have been called a witch. Similarly, people using crystals, astrology, and tarot cards. Okay, so those were all looked at as um, by the church as not being godly. So what happened is Um, how does this affect us? Our psychic abilities, our intuitive abilities. Many people who lived back in those lifetimes who were actually persecuted on some level decided this is too scary, I'll never do it again. Can you imagine? This is 500 years of terror, that or more than that, as a people here on earth of being terrorized. They would do horrible things to people, burn them at the stake, burn down their house, burn their husband, throw the wife and the children in the river to drown. I mean, they would do horrific things to people, hang them, torture them, make them confess. So it and so whenever anything bad happened, there weren't any lawsuits or hospitals. People would look for, okay, who's the witch, because that's the way they were taught, out of fear, out of this whole idea of getting rid of the ungodly ones. Um, so what happens if you lived, like I said, if you lived back in those times and you were punished, in your unconscious psyche somewhere, you may have decided, I'll never do that again. You're afraid of your abilities. You can't connect, or it feels painful or scary. Or you could be carrying it in your body generationally, because even people who weren't persecuted saw others, saw the trials. Some people were the persecutors too. I've met persecutors that have had past lives that were my persecutors. So anybody who is different, okay, so let's get back to, you could be afraid of your gifts. That's how it's affecting you. Or scared of, that you're going to see something scary or bad because of all the fear around this and the terror. You could be exiled if you didn't fit in. I remember going up to my stepdaughter's high school to pick her up one day, and all the kids had the same blue jeans, the same hoodie, and the same tennis shoes. And they moved like this. They all moved like, I'm like, oh my God, they're exact. So they could be accepted in their group. You had to have, the right shoe. And we do that in society. You have to have the white picket fence. You have to have the car that look, the house, the family, everything has to look right or normal. Doesn't matter how it really is, but it has to look that way. You have to buy certain labels of things. If it's, if you're somebody and you've arrived, you have this phone or these shoes or something, which is absolutely ridiculous. Um, or that if you have a lot of money, you're powerful and you're somehow successful. But people who are connected to themselves and their ethics or being authentic, well, they're just kind of weird. So that's changing. It is changing. But to be exiled from your community back then would be to be sent off into the woods or the desert. Your life was basically over. You would go and live as a hermit or you would be killed. Okay. So people who are connected to, when I do past life readings, Merlin, who was an amazing wizard, so he would have been called a witch. So you had men were wizards or shamans or healers, and women were medicine women or witches or herbalists or whatever they called them. So back, so I usually see that you're somehow connected to Merlin, and that's a clue to me. Or people tend to have skin rashes, eczema. Um, People tend to carry a lot of fear, just something bad's going to happen, but they don't really know why. That's not always the reason, but it can be a reason. Uh, Afraid of being individual, of speaking out, of going against the current trend or whatever, that you won't fit in. All that is programming from the inquisitions. Um, and so what it's designed to do is take away your power, to disempower you. Because if you can't connect, if you can't trust yourself, that you're seeing and you're hearing, and even what you're hearing psychically, or what you're dreaming, or what you're feeling, or what you're sensing, or what you're knowing isn't credible, because other people outside you who are authorities know better. Or they could talk to God, but you have to go through the pastor or somebody else. It's not, you can't connect because somehow you're not good enough, or so, or you don't know what you're talking about, or so it's a or it could be dangerous. You could be dangerous if you're, a rebel or a know-it-all, then you don't have the proper training. So it's very disempowering. And it take people, what happened is people lost their abilities. Our DNA structure literally changed from the double helix, which we have now, to the 12-strand helix, which we had before. So as we meditate, we reawaken and tend and do exercises to reopen our psychic abilities, which I teach in my classes. I have an angel class coming. I have a past life regression class on my website too. That's really going to be cool. But and I also do that in my private sessions. I teach people to connect with their intuition and to trust themselves and their guides, even if you make a mistake. But it's about empowering you, okay? And how to do that, and how to not to listen to the negative voice of fear or doubt or insecurity. See what I'm saying? Because all this, it took us away from our superpowers. I have a superpower. I can move energy. I can receive guidance. So can you. It's just a matter of reconnecting with who you are, or maybe you're learning a new skill. I've learned new skills in this life. And so it's learning how to trust ourselves, and that we can create with the divine. We are the divine, and that we can um, create. Maybe your superpower is having compassion, sharing with others, setting boundaries, having, being of service in some way, whether you're fixing a car or cooking a meal, being a parent. So there are many superpowers, but this only allowed you to have superpowers that were not psychic or intuitive. Excuse me. So this is about control, abuse, and fear. That's what the witch trials were about. Controlling your abilities. Excuse me, I'm getting over a cold. So, I don't like scary movies. I'm going to press the acupressure point to stop the cough. Sorry. Acupuncturist could have been on in Asia. They let people, in a lot of countries, they still let people be psychic, and they don't judge them. In fact, there's a lot of witches. There can be negative witches. And I'm not talking about if you're a witch that's casting spells on people. I'm not trying to say that that's okay. I practice psychic healing, or you might call it white magic, which is here in service of people. So that's a whole different video than this. So it's not about scaring people, or, um, casting evil spells, which only have as much power as people allow them to, but I wouldn't want to mess with that. And I think everything we do comes back to us, so I'm not interested in that. But there are people throughout the world that practice that, but many countries believe in sorcery or witchcraft, and currently practice right now in 2025. So there's a lot of that too. And I'm not disrespecting, I'm not saying maybe you're doing good in your community. I'm not trying to attack or be against somebody. I'm just saying that's not what I do. I'm talking about developing intuition and being authentic, being able to be who you authentically are, or work with herbs, or work with crystals or tarot cards, which a lot of people do in America, and in some countries where it's legal, and probably not all countries. I don't know which ones. Okay, so I don't like watching scary movies. I don't like going to haunted houses. It's not entertainment to me. I think The death of suffering souls that are stuck are not something to go and gawk at on the holidays or have a movie about. There's some things that should be left alone unless they are wanting intervention, and each case is different. And so there is things, such things as possession, which is very rare, and I'm not a demonologist, but that can happen. But most of us are pretty safe, and like it's there anyway, so you're probably safer if you can, know how to ground yourself, know how to use crystals, know how to do your tarot cards, know how to connect to your intuition and trust yourself and feel how you feel in certain situations around people. So that is a gift to you because that negative stuff is out there anyway. But I'm not a fan of scary movies. I don't think it's fun to be scared. Um, that's just me. I think Halloween, I like costumes and parties and things like that, but I don't really like the gory stuff. Probably because I've seen enough of it in past lives that it's not entertainment to me, and I don't think it's ethical in some cases. So just be careful if you feel like it's not ethical. Um, so connecting to the sacred and adding ceremony, that empowers us. And understanding who we are and respecting that 9 million of us were killed, probably more, that's recorded, were killed. And when you include, who was tortured and terrified, the numbers are even bigger. So this hugely affects us. And how we heal from this is to take back our power and to be able to use our gifts and abilities. Like when I was reconnecting, I was psychic as a child, but as an adult, I kind of shut it off and got busy or distracted and was eating too much chocolate or drinking or whatever. That'll shut, being angry, that'll turn it all off. So when I stopped doing that and I started connecting with my abilities, some young lady walked up to me and said, "If you're psychic, what did I have for breakfast? Huh?" Like trying to prove that I wasn't. And my answer to her is, I don't care what you had for breakfast. My guides and my higher self show me what matters, and that doesn't matter, and it's not important. That's just a game of prove it that you want to play, and I'm not playing. So it's time for us to empower ourselves as psychics, as healers, as people, and support the one, even if you're not a psychic or intuitive, support the ones that are. There were in some churches, magnificent healers and saints like St. Francis in the Catholic Church who actually performed healings. Um, People who could use supernatural powers to know things, the mystics, um, the Buddhas that brought energy of peace and healing around them and messages of love and unity. And so that's to me is what, when we're just saying you just have to go to this church or that church and those churches should be in a war and you can't even talk to them, you should give money to them because they're going to tell you what to do, which is to be afraid and that you're not good enough. That was disempowerment. That's a lot of what the Inquisitions were about, and it's something that we're healing. And around the holiday season, it reminds me, my mother used to have a sign on the door, "This is not a haunted house, but it is a house that honors the over 9 million women who were burned at the stake for being witches." Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to my videos, check out my classes and my personal sessions, and I'll be talking to you soon. Thank you. I'm sending you so much love. Thanks for watching to the end. I really appreciate that. And leave comments with your connection to your abilities, how your authenticity, how you feel this affected you. Thanks. Bye for now.